Hey, John Gilroy here. Today, we ask the question, can you make federal software smarter, faster, and more efficient? Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Karthik Natarajan, Solutions Engineering Manager, U.S. Public Sector at a company called SNYK, SNYK. Karthik, how are you?
Very good, John. Nice to meet you.
So you're going to bite off a pretty big piece of a cookie here, you know? Federal software, big enterprise software. So you claim that you can make it faster, smarter, and more efficient. Boy, that's a pretty big rock to push up a hill, isn't it? That's a tough one. Well, the phrase that pays in 2025 for the federal government is efficiency. What I want to examine today is the whole concept of software development and how the federal government can make that more efficient. And some people argue that you can do it through application security testing, through software analysis. And that's what we're going to find out. So your company, SNYK, some of my listeners have heard of it, some haven't. Tell us about the name of this company. I mean, I went to your website. There's a dog on your website.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. I mean, SNYK stands for So Now You Know. So when you come to SNYK, you will know about security and you will know how to resolve security. So that's SNYK stands for So Now You Know.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So why the dog?
Dog is the patch. It's a Doberman. It watches all the applications that is built, and so it kind of addresses the security. It's a watchdog, actually. The name is Patch, and that's what the dog is for. Yeah, I mean.
Good. Protector, something that protects you.
It's a protector. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
I know. I read the whole history of the dog in Germany. The guy bred two together. So we know about the Doberman Pinscher. Two dogs came together. Okay, let's talk about software now. So we have a situation where when people put together projects, they don't write code. They usually grab code from the shelf. They grab code from libraries somehow. And today, people are maybe generating code with AI. And so what can happen is bad things can happen to good people. You could approach a project with all the best intentions and wind up with more problems than you realize, and then you will delay, and it'll be slow, and you'll have problems. And so where does SNYK fit in this picture? How can they help our developers listening?
Yeah, SNYK, the core feature of the SNYK is developer security, right? So as you mentioned, John, the intentions of the developers is developing the code, implementing the right implementation. So what happens is with SNYK, we go up to the developer and secure the implementations. So today, the software is being developed at scale with the AI, and developers are building implementations really, really faster. So when they build faster, it introduces more vulnerabilities. So so SNYK, in a nutshell, SNYK address the security at the core where fits in with the developer and address the security right up there.
Okay, let's look at some of these potential problems, Everyone's grabbing stuff in open source, and it may not be the little box you think it is. There could be some problems in there. So there are dependencies in open source, and one of the strengths of SNYK is to be able to look and examine and figure out what those dependencies are, aren't you?
Yeah, that is the core of the SNYK. SNYK started off in 2015 just to make sure that address the open source vulnerabilities. And it is in the 9 years of making, that is one of the strongest point of SNYK, to understand the dependencies of the application and address the vulnerabilities out there.
5-7 years ago, everyone was talking about containers. It was brand new kid in the block. Now it's kind of matured. I mean, people kind of are very comfortable with it, and they're not, you don't have to explain containers anymore. But there can be problems within container images as well, can't there?
Absolutely. I mean, container images introduces vulnerabilities as well. SNYK can scan container images and understand the vulnerabilities and provide strong remediation advices for containers as well, John. Yeah. I mean, I've seen customers building containers and not scanning it and putting into production. It introduces a lot of vulnerabilities. It's not just code and open source, right? So containers assemble all things together from OS to applications. So we want to make sure that it is secured as well.
I remember 15 years ago, I interviewed the folks from Salesforce, and the woman had a bumper sticker in a car and it said, no software. And that was a big deal 15, 16 years ago, And it's gotten to the point where people know what software as a service is. Then it's branched off to different as a services. There's all kinds of, there's satellite as a service now. There's all kinds of as a service. And there's something called infrastructure as a service. Now, when I think of infrastructure, I think of a server down the hall with a Cisco router or something that's pretty solid. But believe it or not, I think there can be weaknesses and vulnerabilities in this whole concept of IaaS, can't there?
Absolutely. Today, how we provision the infrastructure as a service is through infrastructure as a code, right? Which is very popular today. And there are tools like, Terraform, CloudFormation, and Kubernetes, YAML file. So you can define how your infrastructure as a service should be deployed in these code actually, which is called infrastructure as a code. When you do that, for an example, if you're not protecting your S3, which is Amazon S3, with the access control list, right? So then, SNYK captures that, when you scan through the implementation. So when the developers do our infrastructure as a code, we capture right up there to make sure that the infrastructure as code that is rendered as in the infrastructure as a service, it doesn't have any security holes. We make sure that through that actually.
It's just something no one ever think of that. I mean, my refrigerator, I don't have to maintain that. It keeps stuff cold. Infrastructure, that's a kind, software as a service, you figure but infrastructure, what could possibly go wrong? But you could probably cite instances where there have been problems with IaaS. I mean, it's something most people wouldn't think of.
Yeah, they provide the base infrastructure, John. You pointed it right. They provide the base infrastructure. It gives you Lego blocks to build your infrastructure, but wrap around the security controls around it. It's up to the implementers on the infrastructure as a service to make sure that they assemble everything together right way. If not, it can give have security holes into it. That is what SNYK helps work through and provide infrastructure as a code in a secure manner and without worrying about any issues, like we can scan through it and fix those issues as well.
Well, I think the general category at Gartner might be software analysis or maybe application security testing. I'm trying to figure out where you'd fit in one of these categories, these four corners here. There are other companies that do this as well. So my question to you is that what's the differentiator with SNYK? I mean, one of the criticisms of this type of an approach is false positives. And so how do you compare with others, and what's the differentiator with SNYK?
That's a great question, John. It is in 8 to 9 years of making. We have strongest database in the market for vulnerabilities, so that reduces the false positives. At the core, we are addressing application security at scale and providing better developer experience to fix security issues. SNYK takes very proactive approach, a shift left approach for security, addressing security right at the inception. I talked about this before as well, which means that we eliminate security issues from the developer producing the code itself, and we help the developers to fix the security issues. So that's the core differentiator as well. So basically, SNYK also in public sector, SNYK help agencies to increase the release cycle, securing their implementations, and producing very effective citizen services for them very quickly.
If you're listening to this and you're walking your dog or lifting weights or something, and you want to get more information, you can always go to the website, SNYK.io, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Simply go to federaltechpodcast.com and go to episode number 222. But what I found out this morning is that if you go to YouTube, there's all kinds of little snippets on how your system works. I thought that was just better than 500 pages. It was, have you seen those on YouTube? It's like one of your developers says, okay, here's exactly what the SNYK screen looks like, and here's how we help you. I said, now I get it. I mean, it's a pretty nice description, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what I'll do is maybe I'll link to one of those in the show notes. I'll link to one of those clips because, some people can listen, some people can read, but for people with me with low IQs, if I can see a software developer actually inserting code and he tells me what's working, I mean, it's really, really good. I mean, it's like the question I think he dealt one with maybe was 0-day exploits or something. And he talked about, we come up with current vulnerabilities, so we know, and then he shows you. So it's like, wow, it's very effective. So, and you guys are growing and apparently expanding in the commercial market very rapidly, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we have 4,000 plus customers in commercial side. Yeah.
Well, I have the mandate from the podcast gods that every 22 seconds I have to say artificial intelligence. So, I walk down to the 7-Eleven, I say Slurpee, artificial intelligence. I walk into the grocery store, celery, artificial intelligence. So we got to talk about artificial intelligence. So I was at an event, and a general there by the name of Jenna Tempo, he told quite an interesting story. He said they used artificial intelligence to investigate some code, and they found 3,000 lines of code that did nothing. And he turned to the vendor and said, and you guys wrote that code. So AI can do a lot of good things, good bad things. I assume you're implementing AI in some of this, but what I've also found about AI is that just because it's from some AI magic source doesn't mean it's good, does it? And it could have vulnerabilities in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That is indeed very important to know, John. Because today, as you mentioned, without AI, without talking about AI or without using AI, you cannot be working in the software field right now. That is the situation right now. And AI introduces vulnerabilities. When the implementation people, they are using AI, they are producing the code at scale. When they produce this code at scale using AI tools like Copilot and stuff like that, it introduces vulnerabilities at scale as well, right? So we need to put guardrails around it to make sure that AI-generated implementation is secure. And that's where SNYK helps, right? So SNYK can help to put guardrails for any AI-generated implementation and make them secure.
Well, Karthik, I know people have PhDs in computer science. I sure don't. I can barely spell computer science, but they may look at your offering and say, well, you claim to be cloud native. So can you defend that against a smart person going up against you? I mean, so why is SNYK cloud native?
SNYK helps all cloud native applications, right from code, container, and IaaS implementations to secure that seamlessly, right? So that's why we are cloud native in nature. Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense because there's been a whole transition to the cloud and hybrid cloud, and it gets to be so complicated. So I have one of my famous quotes. I go to these events and I listen to people, and software developer was up there, and he said, complexity occurs when systems interact. Oh, baby, interact. But interact is what's happening with every time a software developer puts this. They're interacting with code. They're interacting with the container. They're interacting with the infrastructure. And so complexity is a result of a lot of this cloud native interaction, isn't it?
Yeah, it increases. Yeah, I mean, complexity of implementation increases, and even the security aspects that you need to take care also increases when you do that. Right. So that's why we help in from code to cloud, wherever you are in your journey of implementation, we help them to secure. So that's what we do, John.
Yeah, good. If a product like yours identifies a problem or vulnerability, they may identify more than one vulnerability. And so people may be left with a list of 10 vulnerabilities and you don't know where to start. And if you do alphabetically, sequentially, I mean, it gets different. And so now I was watching this YouTube guy this morning and he said, well, we can prioritize vulnerability. I said, wow, that alone is going to make it more efficient. Remember that I opened up with smarter, faster, more efficient, but I think the prioritization is going to make it more efficient just in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can talk about two sides of it, right? One is from a developer perspective. Okay, I start right now how I'm going to address my vulnerabilities. SNYK has risk scoring mechanisms. SNYK has severity levels. So you can choose. And SNYK also prioritizes applications based on application portfolio as well. So if you look at it I can identify which application are important. I can identify which vulnerabilities are important, critical to fix, and I can fix that right up there, right? So that is a big thing because we have to prioritize right up there, right? So for security personnel, they can have holistic view of all the different applications within the agency. They can see that against standards like OWASP or CW, common vulnerability weakness enumeration or common vulnerability enumeration perspective. What are the top vulnerabilities need to be resolved? How the applications are doing against those. And they can see also various reporting around the applications. They can drive the application development team. Hey, this is what we want to fix. This is what we want to address. So it's not just prioritization. We bring in a better collaboration between security and development team. So security is more providing guidance, and developers are fixing the security issues in our new way of approaching to this.
Yeah, sounds like classic DevSecOps, doesn't it? Yeah. Good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I try to tell jokes. I fail most of the time. And the mandate in 2025 is to say AI. The mandate last year was to say zero trust. But the year before that, if you remember, the mandate was software supply chain. So I want to go back to the mandate from 3 years ago. So with this, I'm just thinking about testing for vulnerabilities and scanning and zero-day exploits and false positives. I mean, this comes under the topic of supply chain of making sure the software that you've chosen is good and you continuously monitor it. So it is software supply chain, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is software supply chain. Yeah. So we make sure that the entire supply chain is secure, right? So we understand the entire development process. We have plugins, not just at the developer level. We integrate at the source code management system. We integrate at the CI/CD process and stuff. We make sure that all the way through the process, we have easy plugins to integrate at various levels and make sure that the entire software supply chain is secure.
Good. We're coming to the end of the interview. I want you to brag a little. I talked before the interview started, and you guys are on your journey to be FedRAMP, and it's like a marathon. It's like dragging a log for a marathon. And what are you guys, like 50 yards from the finish line? Where's your progress with FedRAMP?
As far as timeline is concerned, I'm not sure because, it's the way it operates, right? So, what I can say is we have agency authorization for our FedRAMP. The agency that sponsored our FedRAMP as authorized, and we are going through the PMO authorization process currently. So that's what we are at, and in my opinion, we are at the some final stages. In my opinion, yeah.
Well, good. Well, maybe 6 months will find it. If you cross the finish line dragging that log, it sure is a laborious, long process. Well, we're running out of time here, Karthik. So how can people get more information about your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So in YouTube, you can go and subscribe for SNYK, SEC. You can know-how of the product. You can see why SNYK for application security, all those details, videos and content related to it. So that's what the YouTube channel is, John. Yeah.
So it's SNYK, SEC. That's the channel on YouTube. And I'll put a link in the show notes at federaltechpodcast.com, episode 222. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank our guest, Karthik Natarajan, Solutions Engineering Manager, U.S. Public Sector at SNYK.